So this video has been making the rounds, and it is from NBC, and I totally forgot I had studio mode still turned on, so nothing's been changing. Okay, so can the Sony PlayStation remain the top-selling gaming console? And there is a final quote from Jim Ryan about the whole Activision thing. Let's watch it.
From Spider-Man to God of War and Final Fantasy. It's been 30 years since the PlayStation first brought to life some of the most iconic video game franchises.
Whether it's coming from third-party partners that release stuff that is exclusive to their platform or their own first-party studios making stuff, the library has been the #1 thing that really pushes the success of the systems.
For PlayStation, the game has always been, no pun intended, great content to a great console.
Exclusives are important. Exclusives are super duper important, and anybody who thinks that they aren't important are a little crazy. Are they important in the console business? Yes. Is the console business softening? Yes. There's different layers to this. There's not like one statement that it's true. Is the console business important? Yes, you get more revenue than ever from there. Are exclusives important to the console business? Yes, it is. Are consumers negatively impacted by exclusives? Yes, because you actually need to purchase a very expensive device in order to play that exclusive. And then if you want to play exclusives on the other one, you need to do that. So it's like sort of a nuanced conversation. And I don't fault anybody for being upset about it. I totally get where you're coming from. You invested in an ecosystem and now they're going to the other one. So yeah, they're important to the company, not to the consumer. Internet user is absolutely right. That's a good way to phrase it. Let's keep talking about PlayStation and their history here.
And I think that is where the exclusivity brings people and creates a loyalty and engagement that is really hard to replicate.
During its pandemic era rollout, the PlayStation 5 was nearly impossible to come by.
Hunting for
Oh, check out this news report.
a new PlayStation for Christmas or an Xbox Series 10.
Xbox Series 10. Traditional media can't even get the name of the thing right. Is this a CNBC report? Like, are they referencing the CNBC report or something? Because I think it's absolutely hilarious that he got it wrong. And I know this particular editor at CNBC. I don't know him personally, but I've watched a lot of his reports. He is really good at his job. I really like how he has been sort of adding the tough questions to his interviews, because I watched like the games industry interview with Jim Ryan, and it was all softballs. Even in this produced piece, they asked him the tough stuff. And yeah. Anyway.
Good luck.
Sony's always done great hardware design, and it's one of our strengths. It's one of our points of difference.
Jim Ryan in the house, everybody. You remember the guy made like 1 million videos about not liking his business practices? Let's hear what he's got to say.
The PlayStation 2 is the best-selling video game console of all time.
Yeah, shout out to the one dude leaving a comment saying, how did Destin not remember off the cuff that the PS2 is the best-selling unit with 155 meg? Get out of here.
Nearly triple the sales.
I remember that every day when I have breakfast.
Of Sony's latest PlayStation 5. Annual gaming sales exceeded $24 billion for Sony in fiscal year 2022, which makes up over 30% of the company's overall.
So let's take a look at this. And this is why I was saying, like, Sony revenue by segment. You got financial services, imaging and sensing solutions, entertainment technology and services, pictures, music. They did $24 billion in game and network services. Right? Games are very important to your ecosystem, especially in the console world.
Revenue. The PlayStation Network, the company's online gaming platform, has 123 million active monthly users.
That's huge. Now, does anybody know the number of, like, where did Xbox land? Because Xbox took Xbox Live and now they're bundling it in as Xbox Game Pass. So they've done an obfuscation of the actual number of users that are using Xbox Game Pass, because there's Game Pass Core, which is Game Pass, but not really. And then there's Game Pass Ultimate, which is actually Game Pass, right? So it's super confusing. If anybody knows where Xbox is at, I don't think they've announced the number. I think they said like we have 35 million Game Pass members. But Microsoft has this weird problem where they've defined Game Pass as everything, but they don't count Game Pass Core. So like, what's the number? Anyway.
For reference, that's about the same number of people who tuned in for the record-breaking Super Bowl 58.
Lots of people
You
game.
include mobile, you include global, you put it all together. The video game industry is a $200 billion plus industry.
It's big.
Bigger than music. It's bigger than movies. On a revenue basis, the largest entertainment sector in the world.
Somebody in chat is saying 120 million active users versus like 123 on PlayStation. So it's pretty even. That's actually really impressive, Clay, if you think about it. So Clay is saying, according to Statista, it's 120 million on Xbox and PlayStation's like 123 million. That means with fewer devices in the world, Xbox has managed to have nearly the same amount of subscriptions as PlayStation. PlayStation was, what was it? What did we just say? How many subscribers were there? Like 123. So if they're only like 3 million behind, that's crazy. Let's continue on. Whoop, wrong one. Boop, boop. I've actually been there. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area. You have to remember, everybody talks about, oh, the Switch is so successful. The Switch does this and that and that and the other thing. PS2 is still the best-selling console of all time. PlayStation is the best console manufacturer. It's better. It's done better than Nintendo. And if you look at PlayStation 4 cumulative sales, it's not where the Switch is right now, but the Switch still hasn't beat the PS2. So Nintendo still holds the crown for now. Or sorry, Sony still holds the crown for now.
The Nintendo Home Entertainment System entered Japanese homes in 1984 before spreading internationally 2 years later.
Who heard that noise and knew the game the second you heard the noise? Let's listen again.
System entered Japanese homes in 1984.
What game? Who in chat knows the game from that sound effect? You want to hear it again?
The Nintendo Home Entertainment System entered Japanese homes in 1984 before spreading internationally.
All right. Who's an old like me and can guess the game based off of that one sound effect? I actually don't know what it is, but I'd recognize the sound. I want to say it's like Ninja Turtles. It's one of the classics. Anyway. Oh, it's Metroid. I'm an idiot. It's Metroid, right? Or is it Zelda? Zelda 2? Mega Man? Centipede? I don't know. Let's keep going.
Nationally 2 years later. It utilized game cartridges that were inserted directly into the device, a standard for that decade's gaming consoles.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System.
In 1994, the PlayStation launched in Japan, which accelerated the gaming industry's shift away from cartridges.
Going over to a disc format was a big deal because of how much data could be stored on those discs versus what was, possible on cartridges at the time. And that was a large reason why a lot of third-party studios even moved over to PlayStation.
I had no idea how many awesome games actually released on the PlayStation. The PlayStation came out at a time when there was the Saturn still, there was the Genesis. I was a Genesis kid and poor, but seeing Metal Gear and all these games that were on there, I get why PlayStation had a successful console. I said it in the past at one time that what did the PlayStation 1 even have? And I got roasted for it, rightfully so, because they had a phenomenal lineup.
While competitors in the modern video game landscape, Sony and Nintendo had privately signed an agreement in 1988 to jointly develop an optical disc game player. There were even 200 Nintendo PlayStation prototypes that were manufactured, but the relationship fell apart before its release.
Just when we were about to announce the launch of this, Nintendo backed away, and they ended up going with Philips for their optical disc format. And Sony was kind of left at the altar, stating,
So like, imagine that you've been working for years on a console and then all of a sudden it just evaporates. Yeah. So that had to be really, really hard for PlayStation. And what ended up happening is Nintendo literally created the PlayStation brand and one of their main competitors in the space. Clay says, hey, look, it's Microsoft's Crash Bandicoot. It's so crazy how these IPs changed hands so many times that now Microsoft owns it. I think it's a little silly.
here with this beautiful compact disc reader.
And so, the PlayStation was born. Sony's first foray into the video game space entered the
Tomb
US
Raider.
in a 1995 launch that was announced at the first Electronic Entertainment Expo, known as E3. Sega, one of Sony's biggest competitors at the time, also announced its US release of its Saturn console.
I'm a fighting game guy. So for me, the Saturn was a big deal. I believe it was the Saturn where you could play X-Men, the X-Men fighting game for the first time. It had terrible loading times and like obviously it wasn't great. You could also play old games in the back cart port, but man, being able to play all that FGC goodness, fighting game content, it was a lot of fun on the Saturn.
With the price point of $399.
Before the launch, there was considerable uncertainty. We were moving into a space that had two pretty entrenched occupants, Nintendo and Sega.
The then president of Sony Computer Entertainment America took the E3 stage and made a short but significant announcement.
$299.
So they announced that they are coming into the console market at a lower price point than basically anybody else. And that console was great. It was a really, really powerful console. And ironically, they did the same thing with the PlayStation 4. That was their whole strategy. They said, our console's cheaper. We can share games easier. Like Microsoft, you just lost the plot with whatever's going on over here. And they had, the Saturn had great games like the Marvel and Capcom fighting games. It had the X-Men Children of the Atom game, and it was really, really cool. And then Dreamcast was also really, really cool, but Sony really knocked it out of the park, and they continued to after this. We'll get to the PS3 though.
The price of the PlayStation launching in the US.
That was throwing the gauntlet down. It's like, PlayStation's not here to play. We're here to win. And we're going to come in $100 under all of you. But it just blew the doors off, and people thought, wow, Sony's not here to dip their toes in the water. They're jumping all in.
But there was no way that we could assume that we were going to be successful. And it was really not until the day of launch, you know, we woke up that morning and we saw big queues outside retailers of excited people waiting to get their hands on their PlayStation, that we realized that we were probably onto something there.
The original PlayStation went on to sell over 100 million units worldwide.
Wow, that's huge.
Jim Ryan joined.
Ooh, I got a super chat. Thank you, Clay, for calling that out. What did it say? As of October last year, Sony has 47 million plus subs. They do not report it anymore. I doubt they lost over half of their subscribers. Yeah, I don't think they did. I'm just talking about what's in the video, but I do appreciate the update, movie. Thank you. Yeah, what's really interesting, so like we have this shot of Jim Ryan on the screen right now. In all the interviews that I've seen Jim Ryan in, he comes off very, it's going to sound like I'm being mean. He comes off a little awkward, a little like, I don't know. He doesn't come off like this ruthless business leader that flies all around the world trying to convince the FTC that the Activision Blizzard deal shouldn't go through because if they lose Call of Duty, they're going to die. Like, I feel like he's genuine. He comes off nervous to me, internet user. He doesn't come off smug at all. He comes off a little shy. That's my read on him. I don't know.
Joined Sony in 1994, the same year that the PlayStation was born in Japan. He is set to retire in March of 2024 after a 30-year tenure with the company.
I have hugely fond memories of the original PlayStation, and I'd never really played too many games before joining what was then Sony Computer Entertainment, putting CD discs.
I didn't play games before I joined. Yeah, spoilers, a lot of these business people don't play games like we do. They play games, sure, but not like we do. You know what I'm saying?
To that thing and really experiencing Tekken, experiencing Ridge Racer.
God, the OG Grand Theft Auto, Resident Evil 2, Tekken 3, Crash 2. It was really, it seems like the base thing was about getting PC games onto the console. Maybe that's why I missed the PS1 era, because I bought a PC. So I was playing like Need for Speed 2 on PC and modding it so that my car had more weight, and you would hit the other cars and they go flying off the screen. It was really, really fun. Yeah. Oh, I turned chat off. Let me turn it back on.
Racer, experiencing Resident Evil. Those were great days.
From the beginning, the company knew just being a tech company wasn't enough. You had to bring some secret sauce in for the entertainment world. And by doing a joint venture between Sony Music and Sony Electronics, I think that was the key to the early success of the PlayStation.
Wait, how did he said the music partnership did it? Can somebody fill me in? How did their music partnership do it? I don't really get that.
The PS2 was released in 2000 and went on to become the best.
God, the PS2 is the GOAT, honestly. The PS2 was one of the best consoles ever freaking made. Final Fantasy X, Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Grand Theft Auto 3. Basically every game came out. Final Fantasy 11 came out on this thing. The PS2 was a really, really special console generation. I don't know if anybody in chat was around when that Metal Gear Solid 2, like, this was the first console that I bought. The PlayStation 2 brought me back into the console ecosystem. And then after that, I would get the Xbox for Halo, and I would get the GameCube. Destin, the Xbox fan, does not exist without the PlayStation 2. So I'm super glad that it happened. I think it was a phenomenal console. I played through all the Metal Gear games on this thing. I played through Grand Theft Auto 3. I adore the PlayStation 2. It is one of the coolest consoles ever made, and it just hit everything it needed to hit. It hit everything it needed to hit at the time. I think the Dreamcast was trying to do too much for where technology was at the time, but Dreamcast was also dope, Mark. But man, PS2, very cool console.
Best-selling video game console of all time, selling a total of over 155 million consoles.
I don't know if anybody is going to be able to sell that again, because think about what it did. A lot of people just bought the PS2 to play their music CDs. A lot of people bought it just to play their DVDs. And we don't have that same media need like we used to. So how do you address multiple needs with one device the way the PlayStation 2 did? And then later they added the Ethernet port, they added hard drive. You could actually hack your PlayStation 2, so it was like a computer basically. And yeah, I still have my dev kit PS2 that I got back in the day, because when I was in college, one of my silly dream projects was to learn how to use Linux and make a game on the PlayStation 2 and just get it to run. But yeah, I don't know. I keep getting on these kicks to do that, and I never did. But I do wonder if the Switch will get there, because like the Switch 2 is going to come out, and I wonder if it ever hits that 155 million. We'll see.
We went into markets where video gaming had never really been a thing. So, Southern Europe, for example, Italy and Spain, and places like the Middle East, we established a gaming culture where none had existed.
The PS2 also functioned as an affordable home entertainment system, as it had a built-in DVD player. This
is just a great production shot, by the way, and it was shot a long time ago, so kudos to whoever the videographer was. Yeah, and somebody brought up a good point. The Switch might get there, and I think the Switch kind of did that, because you can have all the apps for whatever you need on the Switch and on the go, and it really captured the audience at a time when they were looking for something like that. You got to remember, Steam Deck wasn't out when the Switch came out. Nintendo really knocked it out of the park with the Nintendo Switch, and I think that's Not since the PS2 have I seen a console come along and just fulfill the consumer's needs as well as the Nintendo Switch did. And it did for a long time too.
Helped some buyers justify the purchase as DVD sales reached $16.3 billion and accounted for more than half of the US home video market by 2005.
We put like The Matrix into a box with a PS2 that you don't like games, but you want to watch this movie. And it was, DVD was a real accelerant for the PlayStation 2 adoption.
But this momentum came to a
even he admits what I just said.
halt when Sony released the PlayStation 3 in 2006.
The PlayStation 3 was a great console. The problem was they screwed up in nearly every possible way they could have screwed up. They crammed too many like little things that you could plug into it on the console. They tried to sell it for like the most expensive price they possibly could. They built it in a way where like backwards compatibility worked, but then forwards compatibility didn't. Granted, it ended up outselling the Xbox at the time, but they basically gave Xbox the 360 generation with the PlayStation 3. It was $100 more expensive. It often ran games worse than the 360 did. It was a mess. And that's coming from a fan of the PlayStation 3. Like, I still have my 60 gig PS3. It's probably going to die any day now, but yeah.
Our Icarus moment was when we launched the PlayStation 3. We created a huge hole in the bottom line that we need to fill over time. The machine was incredibly expensive.
I just remember anecdotally getting that sticker shock when you guys announced the price of the PlayStation 3. Oh my God, who's going to buy this? This is ridiculous. At the time, now today, that kind of annoying.
The guy's name is Steve Kovac. Every video I see with him in it, he is bringing up good points. He's asking tough questions. He is doing a great job. So I haven't seen a video where Steve Kovac has missed.
Normal console price, I guess. Can you just talk a little bit about the challenges in that generation that you guys went through?
Yeah, I think if I had to kind of encapsulate PlayStation 3 generation, I think I'd sort of say that maybe we got a bit carried away with the success that we'd been enjoying on PlayStation 2, and we kind of
I was looking to see if I had my PS3, but it's in storage right now. I took it out a few weeks ago.
stumbled a little bit at the start of that generation, and the early days were difficult.
It was very, very powerful, but it was also very expensive, and it was frankly hard to develop for. We needed to work really hard with some amazing franchises.
You know what else is really hard to do? Grow a YouTube channel when people don't hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. So if you're liking my content, even my reaction content that I'm doing right now, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and hit that like button if you like the video. PS3 was what it was. It ended up catching up.
The company slashed prices multiple times for the PS3, but still lagged behind Microsoft's Xbox 360 and Nintendo's Wii.
The company picked itself up, brushed itself off, came up with some of the most amazing games of the generation. Uncharted began on PS3, Killzone was on PS3, Resistance was on PS3.
Uncharted 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. Metal Gear Solid 4, the parts where you actually play the game are really cool, but yeah.
And knew that we had to win out by not being a computer in your living room, but by being a game machine in your house.
The 2013 launch of the PlayStation 4 proved to be the hit Sony needed after the slump in sales from its predecessor. It launched at a lower price than the PS3, and Sony saw its fastest start in console sales up to this point.
The PlayStation 4... Oh, I forgot to put the video on. Let's rewatch it again. Sorry, everybody.
And knew that we had to win out by not being a computer in your living room, but by being a game machine in your house.
The 2013 launch of the PlayStation 4 proved to be the hit Sony needed after the slump in sales from its predecessor. It launched at a lower price than the PS3, and Sony saw its fastest start in console sales up to this point.
Also, all the marketing for the PlayStation 4 was on point. Say what you will about all the nonsense that was happening with Xbox at that time, PlayStation nailed it. How do you share your games? Here you go. How much does it cost? $100 less than our competitor. Like, how do the games look? They showed like Killzone at launch, and they had good looking games. Granted, some of them weren't the greatest. PlayStation 4 is another one of those consoles that like really hit all of the right notes that it needed to hit. And it's still to this day, can run a lot of PlayStation 5 games. You can play Ragnarok on your PS4, right? You can play the Horizon games on your PS4, right? They never really drew that line in the sand and said, no more PS4 games. You can bust out your base PS4 and still play a lot of the OG games on the console.
In the years that followed, Sony went on to sell double the amount of PS4 consoles compared to the Xbox One.
I was playing a fair bit of FIFA back then because power of the PlayStation 4 allowed sports games, and in particular soccer, that as a European I'm crazy about.
See, he seems nice when in interviews and stuff like that, but like his business policies are what I don't like. He's also doing that nervous tick of like playing with your hands. I used to do it when I started presenting and get called out for it all the time. Like, oh, I really like FIFA, and I would play, I would play FIFA. It's like it's something people notice subconsciously when you're discussing with them, but like I can't remember, it's a behavioral thing that people notice. And that's why I say, to me, he comes off nervous in these interviews. Every interview too, he kind of does this. I've never seen him come off like ruthless in an interview, but when you look at the policies, yeah. Hiroki Totoki, who's over there now, yeah, he's not messing around. I don't get any nervousness from him.
To become really realistic and really great gaming experience.
I think PlayStation's success is really rooted at the core of what they do best, which is content. And, in the industry, we always say content is king.
Content is king. And I think that's part of the criticism that Microsoft received for so long, because especially in, 2022, where they just had a year where it's like, where are your games? Like, they had good momentum, and then they lost it. And hopefully, like, I feel like this year is still going to be a great year for Xbox games and Xbox gamers, regardless of where you play. But it's going to be certainly interesting to see how they figure that out, because content is king. Let's get the content rolling out regular. Hopefully this is the year Microsoft finally figures that out.
And it's true.
And this segment is so hypocritical. This is the one that Gazon Daily roasted them for.
There's this trend where gamers they spend more time in fewer blockbuster games. So what that means for us as game makers is we're making these benchmark titles, and they're big bets, they're big budgets, and that comes with a lot of risk.
I would argue that gamers always did that. Gamers always played the game that they liked the most for the longest. And the problem was the market didn't have as many games coming out. I remember having to figure out like, oh, do I want to play Mass Effect or Rock Band right now? And I was playing like a lot of Rock Band, and Guitar Hero had like Guitar Hero 2 or something come out. And at that time there were choices, and then Crackdown was out around that time. And there was, of course, still Halo. I think there have always been a lot of choices, but absolutely, I played the heck out of Halo 2, Halo 3. Like, those were the games that I lived in. I think that's still true today for a lot of people. But here's a weird perspective that I have. You do feel like you have to keep up. And if you don't play at least a little bit of all these games, then you feel like you're not part of the conversation. There's a lot of FOMO going on right now. And I think a big part of that is because there are so many games coming out right now. So if you're still playing Spider-Man 2 and you haven't 100%ed it yet or whatever, then you start wondering if you're missing out on something. And I kind of miss that feeling of just being able to have your one game. Like mine was Destiny for years, right?
PlayStation content library is composed of first-party and third-party developed games, meaning it's a mix of games created in-house at PlayStation Studios and by outside developers.
The PlayStation depended on third-party developers and publishers to bring content in. We built a platform.
Did they?
We built some software, but the majority of the opportunity was spread against Electronic Arts, Activision, Ubisoft, Namco, Capcom. Sony was happy not to be the biggest publisher on the platform as long as they could increase it.
As long as we could have exclusives locked to our platform, we were fine. Like they did with Street Fighter. And and whatever, but exclusives are bad, and so is consolidation. Sean Layden gets roasted pretty bad online for this interview.
It wasn't about taking shares of the pie. It was about making the pie itself bigger. And I think that was a difference of approach that helped the company to be successful.
But
it was about making the pie bigger for them. It was about making the pie bigger for PlayStation, though. Like, oh my God. This is really about, we did it for you guys. You did it for profit. Like, come on.
Slice of that pie was taken off the table in 2023 when Microsoft completed its purchase of the video game giant Activision Blizzard.
Well, we were concerned about what the regulatory climate would be, but we never thought that there was any, real reason that was legitimate why these two companies couldn't combine.
The big controversy is obviously Activision is a big producer of games, and the concern was that with Microsoft acquiring them, they would own pretty much what is left of independent big studios. And
here's the thing. It's such an interesting conversation because if Microsoft didn't buy Activision, they would have fired a bunch of people. They bought Activision, and they fired a bunch of people at Activision, and they fired a bunch of people at Microsoft. Sony wasn't impacted by the acquisition, still fired 900 people. Embracer crumbled. Like, this isn't... I remember when the Microsoft layoffs happened, and I remember we're talking about the acquisition right now in the CNBC video, but like everyone's like, they were kind of like the first ones to go. And they were like, this is because of the Activision purchase. Sure, partially, but Microsoft, we all know that's not true. Like, why would they try and obfuscate that behind like growing pains? And now they've opened themselves up to like this problematic thing with the FTC, where the FTC is trying to, counter against the claim again and go back and reopen the case and all this stuff. I do think that the next case is going to end up in trial, given how Microsoft has handled the last few months. It's been absolutely ridiculous. So going to be very interesting to see how Microsoft ends up handling it going forward from this point. But let me listen to what that lady was saying again.
Much what is left of independent big studios and not share the games over with PlayStation.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of independent studios left. You know why? Because PlayStation bought them all. PlayStation bought all the small independent studios. So it's like, oh man, there's not a whole lot of these studios left. Who should we buy? Well, we have a lot more money. Let's buy the really, really big ones. I actually have, oh man, I totally forgot I was going to make this video. I was going to make a video talking about what Microsoft needs to do. Microsoft needs to regain the trust of their audience because they bought Bethesda and they said, this is about getting great exclusive content on the Xbox ecosystem. And then a lot of people took that to mean, oh, like you're actually going to pay attention and get some console exclusives locked in. And then they start putting those games out on other platforms. So there's a lack of trust with Phil right now. And that is going to be a very big wound for Microsoft that they are going to need to address. Like, whatever you think about everything that is unfolded, I do think that is going to be something Microsoft needs to address. And there's a few other things. My Monday video is going to be like, Microsoft needs to address these 5 things right now.
You had this interesting...
I agree, Kenny. Xbox wouldn't exist without Phil. It is important. Jim Ryan's about to get roasted. Let's enjoy.
Share the games over with PlayStation.
You had this interesting argument about Microsoft buying Activision and what that could mean for exclusives, what that could mean for cloud streaming. At the same time, Sony has done very similar things, buying studios to make them exclusive or making exclusive deals with companies like Square. In your view, why was the Activision deal wrong or bad for the industry?
Yeah, the reason that we felt this one was different to anything that had happened in the past was the sheer size and importance of the Call of Duty franchise. So we were absolutely thrilled to be able to negotiate a deal with Microsoft to ensure that that franchise remains available on PlayStation platform.
Oh, you mean the same deal they offered you the first day the thing was announced? Jim Ryan is so full of it. He's so full of it. And I am so glad this wasn't one of those softball nonsense interviews. When I had Phil Spencer at Gamescom, you bet I'm going to ask him the tough questions. I will always do that. It's so happy to hear that you're thrilled that you were able to sign the same agreement you were provided on the first day, Jim Ryan. Super happy for you. He deserves to get roasted for this part. And don't forget, he just finished closing the London studio, so don't feel bad for Jim Ryan. He goes, takes some photos with the employees, and they're like, oh my God, they fired everybody.
Platforms for the next 10 years. And that was very important to us, and we're very happy to have done that deal.
But the timeline is a little different though, right? Because
get him.
Why didn't you agree to the deal when it was first offered? And instead you were part of the with the FTC, a key witness for the FTC.
Yeah.
Got him. This was my key thing the whole time. Jim Ryan he handled the whole situation in such a bizarre way. They say he retired, man. I don't know. Hiroki Totoki is ruthless, and I do believe he is probably responsible for all of these firings, but he's not pretending to be everybody's BFF. He is like, we are here to do business, and if you are negatively impacting the business, or the business has been negatively impacted, we're firing a bunch of people. And like, I take no glee in that, but he's not doing whatever Jim Ryan was trying to do during this trial.
You know, we're at risk of getting very granular here, but there are deals and deals. A deal that was offered at a certain point of time may not have been the deal that was actually signed.
Except we know it was. We know it was, Jim Ryan. You're full. We saw the deal because it was there at the trial, and it was the same deal you signed. So I don't know like what nuance there is in it. You wanted the deal to fail. You wanted Microsoft to lose this deal, and you failed in your mission. All right. Y'all know how I feel about Jim Ryan.
Activision acquisition was by far the most expensive in industry history and more than double Microsoft's second largest acquisition of its 2016 purchase of LinkedIn.
Man, just seeing Jim Ryan talk out both sides of his mouth. Oh, you want me here? Yes, you're hilarious. Jim Ryan's your dad. Enjoy your time out. There we go. I timed them out, chat. My bad. Clay, you're sleeping. Yeah, so like the problem is now we've all watched Jim Ryan talk out of both sides of his mouth for the last year or two, right? The problem is now Phil Spencer has done it, and people are roasting him for it because he said during the Bethesda reveal that it's about getting exclusive games for Xbox. 1 year later, they're coming to PlayStation. So what was it really about? Money. The end. Oops.
I see the consolidation in the industry. I see people like Microsoft or Embracer or some groups out of Saudi Arabia buying up a bunch of studios. And I see consolidation to be the enemy of creativity.
You are single-handedly responsible for more acquisitions than anybody else was during the PlayStation era. Am I incorrect? Was it him or was it Jim Ryan? It was Sean Layden. Sean Layden was the mastermind behind buying Insomniac. Like, consolidation is happening. And like, saying this at a time when PlayStation just fired 900 people and Microsoft just fired 1,900, I don't think that's because of consolidation. That's because like the industry's in the toilet right now. Anyway, it's bizarre that the guy who acquired a bunch of companies is talking about how consolidation is bad. Maybe you shouldn't have consolidated so much.
If we've commoditized the product, you're just going to get more of the same.
But throughout its
more of the same, like Spider-Man, great game. Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart. Like, more of the same isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know what I would have rather had instead of Suicide Squad? A 4th Batman game or a 5th Batman game from Rocksteady Studios. That's the problem. Like I'm all for innovation, but I'm also great. Yeah, Nicole says translation, it's good when we do it, but not when Microsoft does it. And everybody conflates the size of the deal for Activision. Why are they buying the big companies? Because Sony bought all the little ones already. So like,
time in the gaming industry, Sony itself has also acquired more than a dozen game.
Oh, look at that. Looks like Sony's done a little bit of acquiring themselves too. Can I move this without breaking everything? Let's see who we got. We got Sucker Punch, Asobi, Valkyrie, Insomniac, Bluepoint, Firesprite, Gorilla, Housemarque, Media Molecule. Are they, and they're downsized. Naughty Dog, hugely successful. They had to fire people. Nixies, Polyphony, Neon Koi, Haven, Bend Studio, Firewalk. It wasn't for the Firewalk game. Something happened at Firewalk recently. Oh yeah, turns out it's not that fun to work there. Yeah, I really appreciate them getting called out, because I don't like that PlayStation saying like consolidation's bad and all that. It's like, you bought how many companies here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, but they fostered those relationships. So it's okay, everybody. Sorry. You can't be like, well, when Microsoft does it, it bad. Company too big. When Sony do it, it good. No. If everybody doing it bad, everybody doing it bad. You don't get to like say it's bad when it's too much. Anyway, super chat from William here. Was it the same deal for COD? Saw reported original deal for all Activision Blizzard games. The deal signed was only for COD. I think Tassie or someone else reported it. So it was a worse deal is what you're saying. It's like Jim Ryan got a worse deal. Good job, Jim.
Development studios, and many of these studios have gone on to produce some of its biggest hits. Insomniac Games was behind the PlayStation 5.
Oh, where's Deviation? Oh yeah, they're closed.
Have gone on to produce some of its biggest hits. Insomniac Games was behind the PlayStation 5's record-breaking success.
I say that because, like, I don't say that as a joke. I say that because they closed like the London studio, and they're the reason that Deviation closed. Good. Yeah, they're not owned, but their game getting canceled probably had a lot to do with the reason they had to close.
Success with Spider-Man 2 in 2023. And now, the way these games are being played is also evolving.
It is, yeah. This has been like, people call it stunlocked online. This is the whole topic that I've been stunlocked with. It's just like the entire industry is evolving, how people are going to consume content. We have, and the big concern online right now is like the next console generation is the last console generation, and then we'll go from there. I don't think consoles go anywhere. People have been talking about the death of consoles since 2007, like whatever.
Over the past decade, Sony's game revenue has shifted overwhelmingly.
Holy crap. Why is physical media dying? Here's a handy chart to look at. 19% of your sales are disc sales. 81% of your sales are digital. And you know why they like digital more? Because they can just delete your games from your library. That was a story that I missed this week where users were just losing their content. Oh, we have a licensing issue now, so your game's gone. But more importantly, they can control the used market because it doesn't exist anymore. There will be no used market. They want that profit from the used market, and they don't get it, and it eats away at them. So what they do, they deleted it. It's not going to exist anymore. You don't get to do, you get a digital code. You can't do anything with that.
From physical discs to digital downloads. Both Xbox and PlayStation began introducing entirely disc-free consoles with the Xbox Series S and the PlayStation 5 in 2020.
I really like digital downloads. My concern is with the news this week about content just getting deleted off of people's units, is the responsibility is not being put on these manufacturers that are allowing you to buy digital goods. If I buy a digital good, it better stay locked on that console forever. The fact that they are able to take a game off of their service, and if you don't have it downloaded locally, you just lose access to it, give me my $60 back. Give me my money back. If you take away my ability to get a game I purchased, I want a full refund. No. Sorry, Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection. Like in Japan, they're removing the Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection for some reason. I don't know why. There was a concern that was going to happen in the US. Okay, I want a full refund. I bought a product. I am entitled to have that saved on my platform of choice. Yes, Brian in chat says the government is going to have to step in, and they should. They should. It's gotten out of hand. You should not be able to do it. Give me my money back. You take my game away, give me my money back.
Both companies are also improving their ability for users to stream games directly from the cloud. Both Sony and Microsoft utilize in-house servers for streaming games.
For Microsoft, the advantage of doing that is that they own Azure, and in that respect, obviously their cost.
Maybe somebody in chat knows better than I do. Doesn't Microsoft also own the streaming technology that Sony's been utilizing, or like the cloud servers or something like that? It's not Azure, but like, or do they use the Amazon infrastructure? I don't know enough about the technology behind cloud gaming. I gotta.
They own Azure, and in that respect, obviously their cost to deliver that experience is going to be lower.
Microsoft controls 60 to 70% of the overall cloud gaming market. PlayStation Plus has about 8 million subscribers to its premium tier that allows users to stream from the cloud. That's about 17% of its users that pay for its subscription gaming service. However, right now, cloud gaming accounts for a small part of the overall gaming market.
If cloud gaming catches on, I might not have to admit I was wrong about Xbox and PlayStation evening out. But if I had to do it today, chat, I got some bad news. I might have been wrong about my silly hand graph. I don't know if this console generation is going to even out. So, yeah. Might just have to take the L on that one. What do you think, chat? Do you think my silly hand graph is going to be correct, or am I eating a big fat L on that one? Probably a big fat L, I would guess.
Cloud-enabled gaming generated just over $5 billion in revenue in 2022, which pales in comparison to the $35 billion in console game sales.
I've lost count of the number of times over very many years that people have said the era of the console is over. Cloud will emerge, and it will, over time, become a significant component of the way that people enjoy interactive entertainment.
He's right. I mean, Jim Ryan's right. Like, say what you will about Jim Ryan, but he's absolutely on the money about cloud gaming. Everybody criticizes mobile still, and mobile is like one of the biggest growth sectors in the market. Like the fact that Call of Duty Warzone has the Verdansk map on mobile, and it, like, you plug in a controller, you're basically playing, I don't know, 360, maybe Xbox One level graphics on your phone. It's insane. And like anybody who writes off mobile, I just think, I don't know why that still happens, because if you're paying attention, you see just how powerful and how fast the technology of your cell phone has caught up. And pretty soon, you know what you're going to be able to do? You're going to be able to just put this next to your TV and then play on your TV. Like, that's sort of the dream, right? Like right now I have a dongle. I can pair a controller, plug this into my TV. So here's what I need when I go on a trip. I need my phone, I need a controller, and I need an HDMI out for my phone. And then I can play a bunch of really good games. I can play Death Stranding off of my phone. I can play Call of Duty off of my phone. I can play, what's that other big, it's like a gacha game. Anyway, you can play all the gacha games off of your phone, and they run really, really well. Bashi Washi is an Android user. He says, I can do that with Samsung already. And yeah, you can play xCloud. Like, I think mobile is going to go big, and I do think cloud streaming is going to be big. But Jim Ryan, got to give Jim Ryan this one. I do agree with him. I think cloud will be bigger, but it's going to take 5-10 years to get there for that one. I think mobile's the next big play, then cloud.
But it's not there yet.
Especially considering that the telecommunications infrastructure needed for smooth gameplay is just not strong enough in much of the world, including certain parts of the US.
And even there's been legislation about the definition of, I think it's broadband or whatever, like you have to hit a certain minimum threshold to be considered that. I can't remember what the terminology used was, but yeah, Genshin was the game I was talking about. Diablo Immortal, like say what you will about Diablo Immortal, but it's Diablo on your phone and it looks really good and it's fun. So yeah.
The fact that there is a rural broadband initiative in the federal government indicates that rural broadband needs work.
This inequality in internet connectivity can also lead to delays in digital downloads, indicating the modern relevance of physical discs for both PlayStation and Xbox.
And oftentimes when people talk about things like console wars and exclusivity and that kind of thing, they really compare PlayStation and Xbox more directly. Nintendo doesn't get talked about in the same breath as often. I feel like people kind of just...
They're in their own world. Like, who are the competitors left? It's Microsoft, Xbox, and it's PlayStation. And that's it in terms of who's competing in this space. Nintendo's like doing whatever they're doing. And they're always going to do that.
Just let Nintendo be its own thing.
Yet Nintendo Switch is the second best-selling video game console of all time, behind the PS2.
I think that maybe the mobility aspect of it, and because it's a handheld, people think about it differently, almost more competing against a phone than not a console. But it is a console.
She's right. And during the FTC trial, the FTC tried to argue that Nintendo doesn't really count. And they're wrong. Gaming isn't about just the console. It's like bigger than that. It's the cloud, which was considered during the trial. It is what Nintendo's doing with the handheld market. It's the Steam Deck. Like, all of it is the games industry. All of it is part of the industry and the market.
Think about what PlayStation has done now with a handheld that you can pair with your PS5 and be able to, move around the home. It kind of shows that they see Nintendo as a competitor.
Shortly before Christmas, we launched PlayStation Portal, which is a device that allows people to use our remote play functionality to enjoy PS5 gaming experiences in a handheld environment.
In more recent years, there has also been an increase in leveraging the iconic PlayStation content outside the gaming space.
I'm really pleased about the early...
I've loved the PlayStation movies. Did anybody see Gran Turismo? I really like the Gran Turismo movie, and I like the Gran Turismo game. I think the way that PlayStation has been handling that has been really, really good. By the way, this Reacts is going to be like an hour long, but it's a good video.
Successes of PlayStation productions working with Sony Pictures. We've taken some of our best IP and converted that to movies, with Uncharted, to the TV format with The Last of Us.
I think what really impressed them was the fact that I didn't turn into a monster.
I like The Last of Us HBO show. I like Gran Turismo. Uncharted could have been stronger. I couldn't finish it. Like, I started it out and it just didn't hook me right away. There was like the bar scene or whatever, and then I kind of bounced after that one. But I hope the sequel's better.
And Sony plans to keep increasing the intellectual property within its systems. By 2025, the company says it expects to be putting 50% of its investment into new IP.
Yeah, we got God of War.
That compares to just 20% back in 2019.
It's an important piece to kind of cement that idea that games are part of pop culture now, and we reach broader audiences every time. Quality in the adaptations is just as important as the quality of the games that we make.
But
I do think it is really important. Like, if you look at what Microsoft has done with the Halo series, the first season was just so off base. Why do they keep doing that? Like, here comes the Last of Us HBO series, and like, yeah, they take some liberties with some of the characters, but none of it like messed up the core storytelling of that product, right? They have the Destiny movie incoming, they have the God of War movie incoming, and it's just really, what is my wife doing? Anyway, they have all of these great, that she's blowing up a mattress or something. I don't know. They have all of these great things.
The gaming industry is facing some headwinds. Thousands of jobs were cut in the gaming industry in 2024.
Yeah.
And last month, Sony laid off 900 workers from its PlayStation division, or 8% of the unit's global workforce. Herman Hulst put out a statement that day saying, "We are at a stage where we need to step back and look at what our business needs. At the same time, our industry has experienced continuing and fundamental change, which affects how we all create and play games."
Yeah, here's the thing. The lady said it at the top of this interview. Content is king. If you make great games, you're going to make the money you need. The problematic nature is so many of these businesses seem to have somehow lost sight of that. And I'm just flabbergasted at how Last Epoch can come along and just trounce Diablo.
I would say that it's really important never to forget that we are in the entertainment business. And that's what we do. That's our strength. I think that's why we've enjoyed some considerable success over the last 30 years. Never losing sight of that as a cornerstone.
This video has been making the rounds. It's from CNBC. Of all people, like online. Yeah, it's at 284K. It's one of the best encapsulations of everything that has happened so far. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. I do greatly appreciate you. Hey, you know what helps channels like this grow? Members. Thank you so much to members who support this channel. If you want to support content like what you've seen today, you can do so by clicking that join button. It is right down there, and you are not going to want to miss this video that I made because it is pertinent to whatever I happen to be discussing right now. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.